Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video I'm going to be taking a look at the player quick start guide for Shadowdark. I did a video to introduce the Kickstarter itself, and then I showed the next video was to go over the GM guide. And so now I'll be taking a look at the player quick start guide, and this is not as unscripted as the last. The last was a first look, and this particular video, even though it's marked as a first look on the thumbnail, I've actually skimmed through it because I do want to focus on some of the game systems and bring some attention to them and what I like about them and any reservations I might have here or there. I will certainly point out as well. So, without further ado, because I want to try to keep this a little bit shorter, so around 30 minutes or so. So, I might skip over portions of this as well. I'm just going to focus on what I found interesting, unique, or have some issues with. So, without further ado, let's go right into it. Okay, let me just double check and make sure that I'm on the right screen here. So here we have it. So it is 68 pages long, and it starts off with a couple of pages that are very quick reference, which I didn't know when I was looking through the Game Master's Guide, that there were a couple pages of quick reference, so that it's much easier when you have the book in your hand that you don't have to flip through the entire thing. And these are most likely something that you could probably print out on the PDF form and have at the table, either on a screen or just loose on the table so that everyone can quickly reference. So here we have the basic gear, and a character's minimum gear slots is going to be 10, and then if they have an 11 strength or a 14 strength, they are going to gain those additional slots based on uh, the strength level. So regardless, if you're below a 10 strength, you're still going to get 10 slots. And so we can see this is the basic gear that characters have access to. As you can see, some like the backpack, the first one does not count as a one of the 10 slots that you would begin with, so that's a freebie. The first 100 coins are also free, so you don't have to concern about that. That's a really interesting thing here because I know that oftentimes when we're dealing with treasure, um, as a dungeon master for a very long time, sometimes we forget about, hey, you found 2,000 silver pieces. How are they carrying that now? My current AD&D group has a bag of holding where they can, show that. But I do, require that they manage their carrying capacity. So this kind of reintroduces that idea of, making the players remember that they have to keep track of what they're carrying, and having coins count. They might get to the point where they're deciding, hey, I'm going to throw away this 100 silver pieces because I'd rather carry this 100 gold pieces instead, right? So you're going to, in essence, have to prioritize your carrying capacity, which I really like. Going on, there's a number of things. Gems vary. Well, that's interesting. So I'll see what that. I guess the size of the gem makes sense. And going on through the rest. So gear slots carry the number of items equal to your strength stat or 10, whichever one. So it's not the strength modifier; it's a strength stat. Player turn. So here you count down timers for your spells and other effects. You take an action and move up to near, split up in any way, move near again if skipping an action. GM describes results. So this is just your player turn laid out in very, very simple um, terms here. Difficulty class, we have easy is a DC 9, a normal is a DC 12, hard is a DC 15, and extreme is a DC 18. And I know the author Kelsey, you know, encouraged the mixing of different difficulty classes as the players are going through an adventure. You should mix it up a little bit. Don't have the same, oh, normal and everything is just normal. So morale, dying, and I've spoken about this as well. I didn't focus on perhaps the death timer, so I will focus on that at this point. So a death timer. So when a character reaches 0, you are going to roll or have them roll if you're the DM. You're going to have them roll a d4 plus their Constitution modifier, and this is the number of rounds in minutes um, that they must either be stabilized or healed. Otherwise, they die. All right. And now, if they roll a natural 20, because they're going to roll a d20 for every one of those turns or rounds, and if they roll a natural 20, they rise up with a 1 hit point. So they've kind of self-stabilized and actually recovered that 1 hit point, and they're back up again. Uh, if the time runs out, let's say they don't have a Constitution bonus and they roll, a 1, and within 1 round, their character is going to die. Distances, they cover it like close is between 5 feet, near is up to 30 feet, and far is within sight. Climbing is dexterity or strength check, half speed. Fall if fail by 5+ points. So yeah, so if you fail to climb something, but you failed by 5 or more points, that means that you've actually fallen, and you will take d6 damage for every 10 feet falling. Moving through, move freely through allies, pass a strength or dexterity check to move through enemies. All right, so that's I've seen that before. That's not anything new. Swimming, you swim at half speed. Spell focus, can't cast other focus spells while focusing. Make a spell casting check at the start of your turn for the spell. Success, the spell stays in effect until the start of your next turn. Failure, the spell ends. If you are focusing, you do not lose the ability to cast that spell. Distraction, immediately make a spell casting check to maintain focus. So, there's always been like distraction, or if you got disrupted, you're going to lose your spell ability. However, here you have to see if you have to actually make a check to make sure that your spell is successful to begin with, which is something new. Maybe not new for this system, but it's being reintroduced, let's say. In this, and there is a chance of spell failure, which I do like. So now we get to the quick start, the cover basically, the start off here, and I am going to point one thing out here, and this isn't a deal breaker for me, but it is somewhat I don't even want to say disappointing, but she does use the reference document, the SRD 5.1 by Wizards of the Coast, as you can see here. And I would much prefer creators try to do without this at all. And in many cases, it's just a matter of changing some nomenclature so that you can avoid using the SRD completely. And some of the things that that Wizards of the Coast had included in the SRD 5.1 are things that they didn't specifically have a license or, or unique control over to begin with. So it was like, it's almost like when they put the SRD 5.1 into the Creative Commons, um, they're forcing you, I suppose, um, if you're going to use the Creative Commons license, to attribute those terms to them, even when they didn't have the rights to those terms to begin with. All right, so I would have hoped, and I will point out in a few cases where I think, at least in my opinion, if those were changed, she wouldn't have had to use the SRD 5.1 at all. Bottom line, I don't want to give Wizards of the Coast any credit um, for anything that someone is writing. If I were producing something, I would avoid using the SRD 5.1 and avoid the terminologies that would make it a requirement. So anyway, I will move on and I will talk a little bit about that when we get there. Um, I'm not going to spend time with what is Shadowdark. I did the first video on that. What defines a game. I'm not going to do that either. Let's go to movement. I've described it several times. Rounds, dice. Going to skip over here. So stats, right? So already she's not using attributes. She's using stats. All right. So it's not, they could not claim copyright on strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. Um, those are common words. If she wanted to, though, she could have changed some of these up instead of saying, strength, say prowess, which other game systems have done, instead of dexterity, agility, and then say, well, this is your dexterity and reflexes. I mean, there are certain ways, if they were going to argue that you had to give them credit for the terms, I would just change the terms up a little bit. There's other words you could use, and it still means the same thing. Very similar with hit points. Instead of saying hit points, use health points. Um, they don't own the abbreviation of HP. Otherwise Hewlett Packard would sue them, right? So there are different places where you could make those changes, and really it's just tweaking nomenclature so you don't even have to use the Creative Commons, especially the ones specific to Wizards of the Coast and their claim. More of this incredible art. Just love the texture of this black and white art. And when I say the texture, I mean you can look at these pock marks inside this inside this tree here and elsewhere. I mean, that's a level of detail that you see in here that's just phenomenal. I mean, it's just it's just something that um, color art, I think has to rely on you know different colors in order to produce the same thing. And here, just using the black and white shading techniques and grayscaling and such, you do accomplish the same thing. But this is just brilliant art. So we go into the overview, and so you have the name of your character, the ancestry. I know there are some people saying, "Oh, they should use race or species or whatever." To me, it's not a big deal. I really don't care. Um, I mean, race was always. Uh, I don't want to say problematic because that's a stupid way of expressing it. Um, Race was never the best choice to begin with, and not because of any social or moral issues. It just wasn't as accurate as species would have been. So but we, it all started with race, and so that should have been okay. But as time went on and people started making a big hullabaloo over it, and without reason, really, or without reasoning, I should say, then so she's using ancestry. I don't see a problem with that either. It's not really that important. Alignment and deities and title and such. Let's get to. So here's your first level characters, and I kind of like this layout, right? So what she does here is she'll put, all right, so when you're creating your character, first level, and then she tells you right off the bat, start with, and tells you what page to turn to, right? So you're going to start with your background, then your stats, then your choice of ancestry, your choice of class, one class talent roll, hit points equal to one roll of your class hit point die, plus the constitution modifier. Your minimum is always a one. The title, the title is a combination of alignment plus class, and I'll show you that chart when we get to it. 2d6 times 5 gold pieces to buy gear, and she directs you to go to the gear on page 32. So here's your various backgrounds. The background knowledge and skills might prove useful during your adventure. Work with the GM to determine if your background provides advantages in given situations. I really like that. That is a really cool way to take just what would normally be some fluff background information about your character and actually give it a an in-game advantage for that particular knowledge area or something, but without it being like overpowered, right? So if we look at any one of these, I'll use 7, our Wizard's Apprentice. You have a knack and an eye for magic, all right? So maybe you would pick up, you would have advantage anytime trying to read a magical book, all right, a scroll or something like that. And so you would have you would roll for advantage on doing that, all right, or you'd roll for advantage on because it says a knack and an eye for magic. Maybe you can look at an item and have a better chance of recognizing it as a magic item. If we looked at acolyte, you're well trained in religious rites and doctrines, and so you would have advantage on a knowledge check for knowing some specific aspect of a religion other than your own. Like if you were a priest, then you would know your own and your own doctrines and rites and such. But if you encountered another religion, then you might have an advantage on the roll of trying to decipher how theirs is different or functions. So anyway, I like that idea that the player and the game master will sit down and they'll determine if there is any, advantage in a given situation tied to background. So here are the stats, and it's very basic stats, and you go from modifiers of -4 to +4. Ancestry. All right, so this is the character's species or races, whatever you want. So you have dwarves, you have elves, you have goblins, you have halflings, you have half orcs, and you have humans. So I kind of like, I was surprised to actually see goblin. I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. They do, have some different differentiation here. So you can play a goblin. Um, Dwarves are pretty powerful. When you look at stout, they start with +2 hit points. All right. Roll hit points gains with advantage. So that means that every time they go up a level, they are and let's say it's a fighter, right? So they're rolling a d8. I'll have to double check that. But let's say they're rolling a d8 for the fighter's hit points. You're going to roll 2d8 and take the highest of the two. So that's, being a dwarf is pretty advantageous as far as hit points are concerned. So that's, that's a big advantage. When I looked at some of the other ancestries, all right, so elves get farsight, so they get +1 bonus to attack rolls with ranged weapons or a +1 to spellcasting checks. Um, Goblins can't be surprised. Halflings, so that makes goblins really good scouts, right? If they're up in the front, they're the point man. Um, then they can't be surprised. So that's pretty good. Uh, Halflings, stealthy once per day, can become invisible for 3 rounds. I don't know about invisible. Like is that was the one thing that stood out to me. I mean, genuinely invisible, or do they just blend into their background, and does it matter what kind of background that is, or something? I know in previous editions it was outdoors and it was in you know um that kind of a limitation to it. Here, saying that it makes them invisible makes me wonder, is that truly invisible, or is it just almost like a natural camouflage kind of thing? I don't know what that really means. So that's what I would like to know. Um, Half orcs get mighty. They have a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls with melee weapons. Humans are ambitious. They gain 1 additional talent roll at first level. And that really is um, a pretty good benefit to having an additional talent at first level. Fighters, so D8, I was correct. So fighters, they can use all weapons, armor, and shields, and they get D8 per level. They add their Constitution modifier if positive to your gear slots. All right. Now here it said, so if they're a hauler, so they get even additional gear on top of their strength bonus. They actually get an additional Constitution modifier bonus to their gear slots as well. So, weapon mastery, they choose one type of weapon, such as long swords. Let's say they gain a +1 to attack and damage with that weapon type. In addition, add half your levels to these rolls, rounding down. So at level 2, they would get an additional +1 to attack and damage. And then you look at their they have grit. Choose strength or dexterity. You have the advantage on checks for that type of overcome an opposing force, such as kicking open a stuck door or slipping free of rusty chains. All right, so a fighter is going to roll on this talent chart, and they can gain an additional weapon mastery. They can gain +1 to melee and ranged attacks. They can gain a +2 strength, dexterity, or constitution stat. They can choose one kind of armor and get a +1 AC for that type of armor, almost like a focus or an affinity for that type of armor. And a 12, they would choose a talent or +2 points to distribute to their stats. So remember, some of these, they get to roll extra. Like if you had a human fighter, they're going to roll on this chart twice. So that's a pretty big advantage, that humans do have for that. Priests, let's take a look at priests here. So priests have a D6. They can use all armor and shields. They could use clubs, crossbows, daggers, maces, long swords, staffs, and warhammers. So they don't have weapon restrictions like you might have seen in AD&D First Edition, for example. They can turn undead. They have access, either celestial, diabolical, or primordial, along with common, obviously. Deities, they get to choose the deity that they serve. They will have a holy symbol for that god. It takes up no gear slots. All right, spell casting. They can cast a priest spells. Two tier 1 spells of your choice from the priest spell list. So this is a little bit different, right? They don't just have open access to all of their leveled spells that they can cast. They actually have to choose. They actually have to choose the spells that they know. So they're not just walking around with a bunch of open slots, and they can pull upon whatever it is in their repertoire of spells. They actually have to um, prepare them, have them ready to go. Each time you gain a level, you choose a new priest spell to learn according to the priest spell's known table. So, like I said, they don't know every first level spell just because they can cast first level spells. For casting priest spells, see spell casting on page 52. Priest advantages, they gain advantage on casting one spell you know. Um, they get +1 to ranged, melee or ranged attacks. They get +1 on priest's spellcasting checks. That's going to be a real major one, I would think. And it's in the average, so most likely they will get that at some point. They can gain a +2 strength or wisdom stat, choose a talent, or +2 to distribute two stats, +2 points, I should say. So they can spread those amongst more than one. And it says what number of spells they know at certain levels. The thief. Now, the thief is always a class that I love playing. It's my most common class that I play, although I don't get to play as often as I like. So weapons, they can use clubs, crossbows, daggers, short bows, and short swords. Leather armor and mithril chain. They have D4 per level of hit points. Their backstab is actually pretty powerful. So if you hit a creature who is unaware of your attack, you deal an extra weapon die of damage. So let's say they're using a short sword. So it's an extra D6. Add additional weapon dice of damage equal to half your level. So if you're second level, you're actually going to roll 3d6 on that backstab. Thievery, you are adept at thieving skills and have the necessary tools of the trade secreted on your person. They take up no gear slots. You are trained in the following tasks and have advantage on any associated checks. So you have advantage on climbing, sneaking and hiding, applying disguises, finding and disabling traps, delicate tasks such as picking pockets and opening locks. Your talents, you can gain advantage on initiative rolls. Your backstab deals an extra die. All right, so now at level 2, you're dealing 4d6 damage. Like I said, that's tremendous if you end up with something like that. You get a +2 to your strength, dexterity, or charisma. You get a +1 to melee and ranged attacks, or you get to choose a talent and +2 points to distribute amongst them. Remember, a human would get 2 rolls on this at first level. So again, big advantage for humans, in this so far. With the exception of the dwarf and um, their stout ability and double hit, or rolling for hit dice with advantage. Um, Humans with that extra talent at first level is really pretty big. So wizards, they can use daggers or staffs. I'm surprised no slings. That's the one thing I'm kind of missing in this. Armor, they cannot wear any armor. They have D4 per level. Languages, they know 2 additional common languages and 2 rare languages. All right, so that's right off the bat. It doesn't matter what their intelligence score is. Learning spells, they can permanently learn a wizard spell from a spell scroll by studying it for a day and succeeding on a DC 15 intelligence check. Whether you succeed or fail, you expend the spell scroll. Spells you learn in this way don't count towards your known spells. You can cast wizard spells you know. You know 3 tier 1 spells of your choice from the wizard's spell list. Let me go back to this because this, whether you succeed or fail, you expend the spell scroll. Spells you learn in this way don't count towards your known spells. So if you learn a spell, you can permanently learn a wizard spell from a spell scroll by studying it for a day and succeeding on a DC 15 intelligence check. Spells you learn in this way don't count towards your known spells. So I'm confused about you can permanently learn, and then it says they don't count towards your known spells. That's where I'm confused. Unless they mean for that day's casting, but it does go into your known. I'm confused. So that's something hopefully someone can point out to me. Let's see. You know 3 tier 1 spells. All right, each time you gain a level, you choose new wizard spells to learn according to the wizard spells known table. For casting spells, see page 52. Okay. And make 1 random magic item uh, as a talent. Wow. CGM Quick Start Guide. Okay. +2 to intelligence stat or +1 to wizard spell casting. Gain advantage on casting 1 spell you know. I really like that. That makes it like you're a specialist, like, magic missile. I gain advantage casting magic missile every time I cast it. You learn 1 additional wizard spell of any tier you know, and you choose a talent or +2 points to distribute to stats. Remember, humans get 2 rolls on this at first level. Titles. So I spoke a little bit about titles, and basically what you do is you look at your character's alignment and their class, and that will determine what their starting title is. So level 1 to 2 for a lawful fighter is a squire, for a chaotic fighter would be a knave, and for a neutral fighter would be a warrior, going all the way up to lord or lady, warlord or chieftain. Let's take a look at thieves, because I always like thieves. Levels 9 and 10, you would be a boss if you're lawful, a wraith if you're chaotic, kind of weird, and neutral, you would be a bandit king or queen. You'd start from robber, outlaw, rogue, renegade, and then bandit king or queen, and so on. Alignment, chaotic characters. So it uses the old school alignments, right? Just chaos, lawful, and neutral. So chaotic characters align themselves with destruction, ambition, and wickedness. Chaotic characters adopt the survival of the fittest mentality. Lawful characters align themselves with fairness, order, and virtue. The order part is why a thief can be lawful. So a guild of thieves actually do have order in what they're doing. They have to have rules that they follow. Um, and then neutral characters find a balance between the two. Common languages, as I spoke, I think magic users get 2 common languages and 2 rare languages. Um, Priests get their choice of rare languages, whether it be celestial, diabolic, or primordial. Draconic is only dragons, um, and so forth. So deities, I'm not going to get too much into this because it's, you might use this system in a different world setting completely. So I'm not going to spend too much time with the various deities. Gear is very basic stuff, right? So you have your arrows, your backpacks, your caltrops, your lanterns. Do you have your pole? Yes, you have the wooden 10-foot pole. Uh, Resource management is important in this. That is a staple of old school role playing games. So I'm glad to see that she has included all of these things. We have the basic gear chart, which I spoke about earlier. Crawling kit. So, and I've seen these are in Castles and Crusades too, where you can get these adventure packs, and they come with a preset kit. usually based on class that your character is, and so they will have class packs. But this is nice. It allows a new player to be like, hey, you spend 7 gold pieces, and this is the gear pack that you're going to start off with, and then your other 3 additional slots and your additional gold pieces, you can then customize it as you need to. Um, we go here with armor. So remember, armor being worn does take gear slots. So leather armor takes up 1, plate armor takes up 3, the shield takes up 1, mithril metal armor only -1. All right, so that's pretty interesting. That's why thieves can use the mithril armor, and they get a -1 on their gear slot. So it's but it costs 4 times as much. No penalty on stealth and swimming. Here are your weapons. It tells you how many slots your weapons take as well. In some cases, they don't take any slots, but you can see here pretty much the bigger weapons do take slots. So great axes, great swords, bastard swords. Finesse weapons, you can use your strength or dexterity when attacking with this weapon. Loading, you must forego moving to reload this weapon. Thrown, two-handed, versatile. You can use this weapon with 1 or 2 hands. That's for like the bastard sword, typically. Weapon types and range. Character names, I'm not going to spend any time with that. Experience points. So I did misspeak before in the last video where I was like, to gain a level, you need to earn your current level times 10. So if you're first level, to go to second level, you need to gain 10 experience points. When you're second level, to go to third level, you need to gain 20 experience points. So these are not, they keep on resetting back to 0 again. And so and then you can see the advancement here on this side, where it's a level 1, you get +1 talent, and then it takes 10 experience points to get to level 2. At level 2, it takes 20 experience points to get to level 3. At level 3, you're going to get another talent, and then you need another 30 experience points to go to 4, and so on and so forth. So eventually, by the time you get to 10, you're going to have 5 talents at least, possibly 6 if you're a human, in your, you know, in your on your character sheet. So you're going to be fairly powerful, I think, by level 10. It'll be interesting to see creating a character specifically for level 10 and seeing what I actually end up with. So that'll be an interesting thing to check out. Talent roll, you gain 1 roll on your class's talent table. When you reach the indicated levels, duplicate the talents. Yeah, I already talked about that. Increase HP. Remember, in this game here, you do not apply your Constitution bonus to levels beyond first level. So that the Constitution bonus only goes to the first level hit point pool. Thereafter, you're just rolling your die. Gameplay. Advantage means you roll twice, 2 die, and you take the higher. Disadvantage, you're rolling 2 die, you're taking the lower. If you have advantage and disadvantage, that means canceling. They kind of neutral out. You're just rolling 1 die. Natural 20s are automatic, and they're criticals. Natural 1s are automatically fails, and they are typically fumbles. An attack roll automatically misses and might even strike an ally. I haven't looked further ahead to see if there's a fumble table. I hope that there is. The D6 decider. If there's a random chance of an outcome, such as whether a drop torch goes out, the GM calls for a D6. A 1 to 3 results the worst outcome, and a 4 to 6 is the better one. All right. You might actually use that for whether or not you hit an ally. with a natural 1. Luck tokens. Sometimes the GM awards a luck token to a player for an exceptional role playing, heroism, or just plain coolness. Each player can only have 1 luck point at a time. Um, really helps out if you're going to get to reroll any roll that you've made by using that, so you can counter, that critical fumble. How many to give? The GM might award 3 to 5 luck points per player during a session with pulpy heroic feel. All right, that's a lot of luck. But hey, um, I would probably only give out 1, unless it was like she indicates like a really crazy heroic kind of thing. But yeah, if you figure you have 5 players and 5 players are walking around with between 3 to 5 luck points, that's a lot of re-rolling. So anyway, I'm not going to go into that. Making checks. Basically, you're rolling d20, adding any modifiers, and then if it is easy, you just need to roll a d20 plus modifiers and beat a 9, meet or beat a 9, meet or beat a 12, 15, or 18. Opposing checks. To make an opposed check, each participant rolls relevant stat check at the same time, even if it's not their turn. The highest result wins. Reroll ties. Okay. Real time, I really like real time, and they talk about real time. I talked about it earlier, especially like with burning torches and that kind of thing. Time passes in the game world at the same pace it passes in the real world. 1 minute or an hour of game time is equal to 1 minute or an hour in real time. All right, so sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, the hours can kind of match up a little bit better, but sometimes you get into a combat that just takes, a long time. And I guess you could pretend that, yeah, it actually took that hour to do that fight. Um, but, it remains to be seen. If it works, great. Um, if it doesn't work, don't really hang up on it. Turns and rounds. I've spoken about this before as well. Um, Minutes pass, effects with the duration of round expire. The GM rolls 1 random encounter check that occurs on a 1 to 3 on a d6 um, while this time is passing. All right. Um, yeah, and I like that. I spoke about that earlier, where depending on the level of danger you're in, determines how often you make those random encounter checks, which I really really like. That's pretty cool. Initiative. Everybody at the table, including the GM, rolls initiative. So you better hope that the GM doesn't win initiative, because then the GM will have initiative for the entire session. All right. And so, or the entire encounter if there's one specific encounter. Um, and then, um, and then they go in order or counterclockwise going from that point. Takes the first turn and then it goes clockwise. I'm sorry, clockwise in that roll. So that's pretty cool. Visions. All characters need light, and this has been talked about over and over again, right? So none of the PC races have ultravision, intervision, uh, intervision, or night vision, or dark vision, or any of that stuff. Infravision. Sorry. Um, so you need to carry a torch, and your torches will burn out in 1 hour of real time. So you might have to carry multiple torches. Movement distances, I've spoken about a number of times: close, near, and far. Makes it very, very simple. You don't have to worry about boxes on, the 10-foot square boxes on the map so much. Various actions you can take resting. Interruption. Let's take a look at this. So to rest, a character must consume a ration and sleep for 8 hours. All right. Cool. Love it that they remind that you need to eat a ration. A lot of times we forget it. And so it's a good reminder. Sleep can be broken up for light and routine tasks, such as talking, such as taking a turn on watch. All right. Interruption. Each stressful interruption of rest, including combat, requires an affected character to make a DC 12 Constitution check. On a failure, the character consumes a ration but gains no benefit for resting. All right, that's pretty cool, and I haven't seen that before, where you're actually saying, well, you're not going to get any advantage to resting. Now, I guess they can always stay longer, um, and kind of restart the whole resting phase. But I would I would probably, you have to make more random checks and such like that. So it just increases the chance of getting interrupted again if they did that. So that's going to be very interesting. The impact of the resting economy, if I want to use that terminology for it. Success means that you get to reset everything. Danger level, we spoke about this. So unsafe every 3 hours, risky every 2 hours, and deadly every 1 hour. Um, and I'm assuming that's during resting. Campfires. In many cases, adventurers need a light source while resting. Characters can combine 3 torches into a campfire that can't be moved once lit. The campfire lasts 8 hours, while at least one character remains near it, and it casts light out to near distance. Hiding and sneaking, hiding limitations. Creatures can hide while other creatures are able to see them, even at a casual glance. Detecting, looking in the right place automatically reveals a hidden creature. Otherwise, the searcher must succeed on a wisdom check to perceive a hidden, hiding, or sneaking creature. Surprise. Each creature who begins its turn undetected has the advantage of surprise. All right. So if you're undetected, you're going to have the advantage of surprise. Determining surprise, combat initiative. I'm just skimming over a lot of this. I'm looking for things that stand out as being unique, new, um, just really interesting. I'm not seeing anything just yet. A little weird pop up. Casting spells. Yeah, let's dig into the result. If you fail your spell casting check, the spell does not take effect. You can't cast that spell again until you complete a rest. Critical success. If you roll a natural 20 on your spellcasting check, you may double one of the spell's numerical effects. This remains in effect on a focus spell until your next focus check. All right, that's cool. Yeah, so if you're doing something that does damage over time and you're focusing on it, crap, there could be a lot of damage being dealt out. If you roll a natural 1 on your spellcasting check, the spell does not take effect. If it was a focus spell, the spell immediately ends. For more details on focus spells, wizard spells, if your spell was a wizard spell, you can't cast that spell again until you successfully complete a rest. You must also roll on a wizard mishap table corresponding spells tier. All right, so that's going to be page 54. I'm going to jump ahead to that page. Um, Priests, when they fail, they have to do penance. Um, they have to do some kind of a penance in order to get back into their deity's good graces. So, Wizard Mishap spell, tiers 1 and 2. A 1 on a d12, roll twice and combine both effects. Reroll any further ones. So refraction, you target yourself with the spell. Let's look at some other ones. The horror. You scream uncontrollably for 3 rounds in a primordial, drawing lots of attention. All right, so unstable conduit, you have a disadvantage on casting spells of the same tier, so that same level for 10 rounds. I'm not going to spend any time on rolls here. Spell attributes, so tiers range. Tiers is another word for levels. So here we have the priest tiers, 1, 2. It's only 2 tiers of spells here, which I haven't come across yet, so that's interesting for me. And wizard tiers, just 2 tiers of wizard spells. And now we have the spell types, specific spells. And this is community, and there's and we are done. And then we have another random character generator for Shadowdark RPG is the very last page. Okay, so so as you can see, I mean that's a pretty quick overview over everything, and I pointed out the few things that I either didn't quite get, things that I liked, things that I'm a little bit concerned about, but for the most part, I hope you like this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comments section. If you hadn't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And I do encourage you to take a look at this. Again, it is free, so you can go through my affiliate link. Go to DriveThruRPG, type up Shadowdark, and you will find the free quick start guides for the game, and take a look at it yourself and make that decision for yourself. I think that this is something, this is something I backed. So I came out and I said that already. This is something that I backed, and I backed it as soon as I saw the Kickstarter, and I was like, all right, this sounds really cool. Now, having gone through the GM's guide and for the quick start, I'm sure it'll be much more in depth when the game is released. But just based on what I've seen, I'm glad that I backed it, and I'll be happy to have the books in my hand, at some point, and have the full versions of the of the PDFs. And when that happens, then I will do another revisit to Shadowdark and do full review on the game system at that point. So listen, I'm really impressed with this. This is a pretty cool game. It sounds it's unique enough from the other OSR games that I have that it's something that I'm glad I'm backing and looking forward to getting the full version in my hands. That being said, this may not be my last OSR game that I pick up over these next several weeks, several months, or whatever. And this is not the kind of game, at least for me as a longtime dungeon master, am I going to use this to replace AD&D First Edition? Probably not. Or Castles and Crusades, or any of the other games that I do run. Probably not. Will I run this? Absolutely. Will I find a slot where I can run this system and do a mid to long term campaign? Because I don't like doing short campaigns. But a mid-length campaign or a long-term campaign, absolutely. If I have the time to do a long campaign, I will certainly do so. But I could definitely see, and haven't even seen the zines and everything that are going to come with this. So there's quite a lot of content in the Kickstarter that that you could probably run this game system for months and still not get through all of the Kickstart materials there. So there's a lot coming with it, and so I'm really, really anxious to see that stuff, or excited, I should say, to see that stuff come out and take a look at it. So thanks for joining. As always, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. Maybe it'll be to run Shadowdark. Once I go back through that little mini adventure that came with us, I could certainly see running that for my gaming group, and as a one shot, and see how it goes, and see what everybody thinks of the system itself. And that's something that we all should be doing in this hobby, is expanding our experience with different games, and utilizing them, and pulling from them ideas that we find, and bringing them into other games, and such. So yeah, you should never be tied to just one game, and consider that to be enough to fully experience this hobby for all that it has to offer. And this video here, this is on the anniversary date, March 4th of 2028, is when Gary Gygax had passed away. And so this is kind of a good homage, if you were, to someone who cared about the hobby more so than just Dungeons and Dragons or just TSR, and wanted us to experience other games that were out there. So keep that in mind as well. All right, thanks for joining. I hope you will like this video as always, and stay safe. And I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. Thank you.